All right, your chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff instructions. Chairman and Joint Chief of Staff, Index 3500-0H, 3500-01H, 25th of April 2014, distribution A, B, and C, J7. All right, Joint Training Policy for the Armed Forces of the United States, reference to enclosure E. Purpose to establish the Chairman and Joint Chief of the Staff of the policy review of the Joint Training System, the planning and execution and assignment of the Joint Training, the instruction, alliance, the guidance of strategic planning, next generation training with the Department of Defense, and include the Joint Training and the Joint Education references B and C. Cancellation supersede of the Chairman and Joint Chief of the Staff, Index 3500-01G, on March 15th of March 2012. Joint Training Policy Guidance for the Armed Force of the United States is superseded by this publication. Applicability. The Chairman and Joint Chief of the Staff Index apply with the combatant commands or CCMD to serve as a reserve component for the National Guard Bureau. National Guard Bureau Combat Support Agencies, or CSAs, joint staff and other joint organizations develop and coordinate with the joint training program for the assigned staff of the organization deploying component forces and staff's assigned forces policy. Title 10 of the U.S. Standard Code to Section 153 prescribes the subject authority, direction, control of the President and Secretary of the Defense for the Chairman of the Joint Chief of the Staff here or thereafter referred to the Chairman will be responsible for formulating the policy, technical standards, execution, action of the training of the armed forces. The instruction contains the policy of the Chairman of the combat commands, serve with the reserve components, the National Guard Bureau, Combat Support Agency, Joint Staff, and the other joint organization planning, conducting, assessing joint training. Definition C, glossary, responsibility C, enclosure. The summary of changes. The instruction has been modified with the document of the commandment. Combatant commanders exercise the engagement of the training transformation CE2T2 program change that incorporated the new training guide for the Department of Defense, document the entire concept of the exercising planning and agent update, the clarified definition of the joint exercise program, incorporate cyberspace training and exercise policy, then issue the joint training focused on the leader development based on the chairman endorse the desired letter or attributes. Identify the program process, the data integration from the joint training GTS and the joint lessons learned program. Recharacterize the type of the joint training and individual collective staff training, including the collective training responsibility. Unrestricted the directive to approve of the public distribution unlimited and on NIPR net DoD components include the combatant commands and the federal agencies policy. Public may obtain a copy of the directive through the internet with a command Joint Chief of the Staff directive, the electronic library, a DTCI mil.cgs directive. The Joint Staff activities may also be accessed the SIPR directive, electronic library website. See reference D. Effective date. The instruction is effective upon receipt of the David L. Goldfein, or Lieutenant General, U.S. Air Force Directive, Joint Chief of Staff. The enclosures are A, the Joint Training, B, Joint Training System, C, Chairman, Joint Training Policy, D, Joint Training Responsibility, E, Reference and Glossary. Table of contents. Enclosure A, the joint training. Purpose of joint training and operative. Joint training imperative, strategic guidance, joint to learning continuant, joint training system, the activities event, the capabilities and competencies for the joint training policy, authority of the joint training policy, procedures changing to the policy, enclosures, the B of the joint training system, introduction, joint training system, the methods of the joint training terror, the categories of the training, type of the joint training, individual joint training, joint course of certification, Conjunction for functional training, joint training, information management system, universal joint task list, the joint of the doctrine, education training, electronic information system, joint lessons learned program, joint lesson learned information system, joint knowledge online defensive readiness reporting system. Enclosure C, chairman, joint training policy, chairman's joint training policy, chairman's tenets of the joint training, chairman's joint training guidance, commanders, training guidance for the highest interest training requirements, use of the joint training information management system, joint training problematic capability requirements, out of cycle the training support request, joint training milestones, see table 1, enclosure D, joint training responsibility, office of the Secretary of Defense, chairman of Joint Chief of the Staff, the Joint Staff, Combat Command, several components commands, U.S. Special Operation Commands, Joint Force Providers, Services and Combat Support Agency, National Guard Bureau, Joint System Acquisition Program Managers, enclosure E, reference glossary and figures, joint 1, learning continuum, joint figure 2, joint training system 4-phase process, table key, joint training milestones, and the enclosure A. Joint training. Keep our military to the best trained, but they equipped with the world of the non-negotiable imperative of doing so. During the period of official concentration will be hard. We will need to be selective for the joint capabilities reconstitute after the decade of war. You will need to get a smaller and stay strong. And importantly, we will need to have even more joint advance and interdependent for the integration of new capabilities. General Martin E. Dempsey, of the 18th Chairman of the Joint Chief of the Staff of the Chairman, Strategic Direction of the Joint Force, February 6, 2012. Purpose of the instruction provided with the Chairman of the Joint Chief of the Staff of the Command, Combat Commands, Service of the Reserve Corps of the National Guard Bureau, corresponding service. CSA or cooperative service agencies, joint staff, the joint organization specified for the joint training, focus for the joint mission on essential tasks, the agency mission essential tasks, derived by the commander's agency, direct with the forward mission analysis, full support with the readiness of the joint force development through the integration of the left of the learners, mature joint concept, joint solution with joining training, the instruction applied for the individual collective joint training programs, and affirm the role of the commander, direct for the training readiness of the organization, highlight the importance of the cooperative supporting agencies and supporting the mission of preparing the U.S. force for joint and multiple nation operations. Joint training imperative. The U.S. force may be employed across the range of the military operation predominantly with the interagency multinational partner environment. The Department of Defense must support national security requirements for the joint military capable of design of the adaptive to succeed in any operation environment. The Department of Defense and its mission partners must be prepared to operate the joint interagency, intergovernmental, multinational environment. The joint training challenge is to be responsive to all emerging examination requirements of the combat commanders. Strategic guidance for the Unified Command Plan. The reference E of the guidance for the employment of the force. Reference F in the Joint Strategic Capabilities Plan. GSCP. Reference G for the principal source of the guidance for the combat Combat Command Theater Global Campaigns, Contingency Posture Planning Efforts within the informed subsequent development and supporting joint training programs. All right, the guidance for the employment of the force of the consolidated for the security cooperation contingency plan with the global defense posture for the global force management, the planning guidance for the global, the guidance for the employment force over the also the direct for the geographical section of the commanding combat commanders to develop the campaign, the plan to establish and accomplish with the assigned goals, theater strategic end states, and the campaign plan with the integrate with the steady state with the theater security cooperation activities, phase 0 activities, ongoing operation, the TSC, the training, TSC. No, the TSC phase of the Euro ongoing note. The TSC efforts must occur throughout all phases depending on the scenario. The guidance for the employment over the force, the guidance for the employment force, also direct for the function of the combat commands, military departments selected for the components of the cooperative supporting agency, develop the campaign support plan to support the full range of the command, combat commands campaign plan of your joint strategic capability plan, implements global and theater campaigns, campaign support, contingency posture planning, guidance for the reflective of the guidance of the employment force, functional theater campaigns plan with the basis of the development of the resource informed global oriented or theater joint training strategy. These plans are operational with the combat command global theater of the function strategies by designing, organizing, integrating, and executing security cooperation activities, including training events. These activities are designed to promote acceptable international behavior by potential adversaries, sustaining peace and security under conditions to promote the U.S. national interest and set the condition for the military success. Contingency cannot be prevented consistent with the joint training program development, having the joint training manual reference H. Exercise plan and TSC planners must work closely together to maximize the joint training system, the events, and the combatant commanders as essential to TSC objectives. All right, your joint learning continuum. The concept of joint learning continuum enable the joint force to develop the employment of the joint learning with the continuum force for the creating and sustaining joint qualified personnel, joint leaders capable of effectively integrating and synchronizing national capabilities, successfully implement national security military strategies. Joint learning continuum is coordinated progression and integrated with the discipline learning process with the DoD personnel specified joint performance standard. The continuum of the professional learning instills the habit of mind, skills, ability, value for their education, training, self-deployment, and experience. Joint learning continuum concept of the experience of the core competence of the capability of the collective of the services have been with the continued critical function of the foundation of our military's ability to achieve the national aims. Joint capability there must be based effective integration and synchronization of the services provided with the capabilities force under the unified command. The core element of both services joint capability is the individual military member officers that are joint qualified based on their achievement and or completion education training experience and development and youth talents skills ability relevant to the definition of joints of matter described in the Chairman Joint Chief of Staff vision of the Joint Officer Development reference I of the application of the joint learning continuum will affect the career long achievement the documentation training of law, joint experience, joint training, joint education of all DoD members, officers, enlisted government civilians, and contracted joint learning continuum supports fulfilling the personal performance provisions requirements established in the combat directors, joint force commanders. Joint learning continuum, education, learning, performing across the top, familiarization, certification, execution, individual training, individual preparation, the joint duty, self-development, integrated self-discipline, preparation, defined performance and experience, the staff training, mission ready, joint unit training, collective preparation, joint operations, collective training, indoctrination, qualification, validation. Figure 1 shows the joint learning continuum. The systematic approach of the professional development throughout the careers of the embodied joint learning continuum. The educators training commanded for the learning support elements, information provided. The information managers can use the myriad, the existing technical resource, the technology, facilitate achieving specific learning objectives, the improvement of the joint preparation readiness, and achieved throughout the integrated application of these elements and system processes embedded with the joint learning continuum. The commanders are each for the successful level to determine how the best efficient reach of the level of learning necessary to achieve the mission readiness for the approach of the managing the integration, individual, collective, joint preparation, and force provided for the commanders and formal education training institutions support networks that is critical to improving the joint operational capability, achieving the joint readiness. C. Joint professional development is a product of the learning of the continuum of the compromise of the four independent supporting pillars, joint individual training, joint professional military education, and joint experience with self-development, joint reference I of the joint professional development, assume the competent service educating, training of experienced individuals, as training audience to maximize joint readiness. Joint professional development is essential for all personnel preparing for the assignment of the joint staff, including officers of the professional specialties. Reinforcement leader development in the joint professional military education throughout the joint training is essential to the tenet of the Chairman plan to develop the joint force for the 2020. Reference J. Accordingly, the 6 officers of the Department of Logistics Agency are established for the adoption across the education training venues and institutions. 1. Understanding the environment and effect of the instrument of the national power to anticipate the adapt, the surprise, the uncertainty, recognize the change, the lead and transition, operate the intent through the trust of the empowerment and understanding of the mission command, make the ethical decision based on shared value of the profession of the arms, think critically and strategically applying the joint warfighting principle, the concept of the joint operation attainment that will require the integrated effort for across the education, training, destruction, align with the defensive logistic agency with the competency with the outcome that can be talked with the exercise and measured. A similar support, similar but separate focus listed with the Department of Logistics Agency for entitled component of the joint forces that have been endorsed by the chairman in reference K of the 6 enlisted Department of Logistics Agencies are ability to operate the commander's intent to enable the mission command at all levels to make sure the sound effective ethical decisions made with the value standard of the professional arms. Utilize available resources to enhance the discipline, readiness, and resilience of the health of the total force. Anticipate, communicating, migrate, and mitigates risk operating in joint interagency and intergovernmental multiple national environments. Think critical in developing agile, adaptive leaders, training and divine the instruction applied with the exercise of acquiring, retaining knowledge and skills, ability with the attitude or KSAA necessities, complete the skills of the task. It is defined in reference one of the joint training is including the mission rehearsal with the individual unit staff that use the joint doctrine and techniques and procedures or TPPS to prepare the joint force of the joint staff to respond with the strategic operation tactical requirements considered by the commander, combat directors to executive execute assigned anticipated mission. In the broadest sense, the education conveyed for the general body of the knowledge developed the habits of the mind applicable to the wide spectrum of the in-depth of the view of the personal learning demands, educational large defined with the cognitive demand and foster the diverse perspective, critical analysis, abstract reason with the comfort of the ambiguity, the uncertainty, the innovative thinking, the particular with the respect of the complex nonlinear problems. This contrasts with the training with the focus of the instruction of the personnel to enhance the capability of the performing special functions and tasks. H. The training education non-mutual exclusive for the elements of the education training are most valuable for the application and achieve the desired learning objective for the ultimate perform outcome of the virtually all military schools professional development programs and include elements of both education training with the academic programs. In reality, the education trainings are part of the generation sustaining with the individual abilities to perform. Joint experience reflect the successful application of the individual's learning via the joint assignment of the joint training or the GPMA, which is your joint professional military education. Self-development is essential. Joint warfighting is not academic. It's the application of the knowledge, skills, and ability and attitudes in the operational environment with the increased level of experience corresponding directly with the increased level of proficiency performance of the mission task. Self-development recognize the empowering the individuals responsibly actively participate in their own personal growth with the necessary positive step, the self-study with the pursuit of the knowledge to accelerate the individual development, allows flexibility, accommodation of the individual needs and desires, the integrate the individual preparation, collective preparation of force, provision, commanding, training programs, recognize the collective capability of the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and once again, there's knowledge, skills, abilities, and attitudes. Effective integration of the education, training, and the self-development experience lead with the performance based on the established task and conditions standing for the achieve the readiness of joint duty and joint training, joint operations. Our joint training system, or JTS, support the DOT implementation of the joint learning continuum to provide the methodology to plan and implement a comprehensive organizational program that may include elements of the training, education, self-development experience to achieve the mission capability. Joint training system is designed to facilitate the adoption and the integrated mission capability requirements-based method of aligning the individual collective joint training programs as assigned with the mission consent with the command and priorities required with the capabilities available resources when executed entire with the joint training system. The supports all aspects of the joint force development with the doctrine, military education, joint training, joint lessons learned, joint concept development, and experimentation. It also enables assessing of the training operation at all levels of incorporation lesson learned with the emerging doctrine, nature of the joint concept of the joint solution across the Department of Defense. Combat Command, service with the Reserve Components, National Guard Bureau, cooperative supporting agencies, joint staff, and the joint organization providing capability of the command. Combat Command's mission should use the joint training system to manage joint training in accordance with the IAW, with the directive of the four-phase methodology described in Enclosure B of the reference H. 6. Activity, events, capabilities, and competency for the joint training policy, individual joint training activities for the academic instruction, distributed learning, organizational, institutional training, on-the-job training, develop the joint core competency, supporting joint activity programs, enable the joint collective training. Combat Chairman, Joint Chief of Staff of the Combat Command supported collective training events include the Joint Extra of the National Exercise Program, Chairman Exercise Program, and Joint Exercise Program. Deployment for the training and the support of the security of the cooperation regional president for the Cjcsi. They include the state partnership training events, military support provided with the training prepared exercise with response for the civil authorities of the state local level that may not fall under the federal exercise program. Joint live virtual construct the training programs, the seminars, war games, assessment of the training range for the youth to conduct and support joint training, support joint capability integrating development system by the joint staffs, J7 in response for the force preparation work group, supporting the force support with the functional capabilities board, managing the integration portfolio of the doctrine, organization, training material, leadership, the education, personal facility, the policy, or .MLFPF. The recommendations are arrived at the non-material force of development activities that include the joint training, education, doctrine, lesson and learn of the concept development, authority of the joint training policy, the authority of the conducting the joint training involved with the Goldwater Nicholas Defense Reorganization Act of 1986, the Public Law 99433, the Title 10 U.S. Standard Code, Section 153 reference specified by the chairman function for the planning the advice and the proper policy formation consistent with the specified function consistent with the Title 10 U.S. Standard Code Section 163B1 consistent with the Title 10 U.S. Standard Code Section 155E. The chairman is responsible for the following joint force developments and activities. Developing doctrine in the joint employment of the U.S. Army or employment of the U.S. Armed Forces, the formulation and policy, technical standards, execution act for the joint training of the U.S. Armed Forces, the formulation of the policies coordinated with the military, educate the members of the U.S. Armed Forces, formulating policy for the concept of development, experimentation, the joint employment of the armed forces, the joint formulating policy for the gathering, developing, disseminating joint lessons learned for the armed forces. The chairman will formulate the joint training policy, establish the policy guidance for the technical standards of the joint training system, the joint training information management system, or JTIMS. Make the JTIMS enterprise with the solution available to the department as a component to validate joint training, the requirement, the functional area of the training requirements of the training support with requirements shall be validated, documented, and managed for the joint staff. offers the primary responsibility of the designated lead organization as appropriate to Title 10 U.S. Standard Code Section 164C with the outline of the command authority of the commanding commanders include giving the authority direction supported by the commands of forces necessary to carry out the mission assigned by the command, including authority direction over all the aspects of military operations, joint training, and logistics. Coordinate and improve the aspects of the administration support, including the corrective and control of the resource employment, the internal organization, training, and discipline necessary to carry out the mission as assigned by the command. The USP reference the eve of the combat combat commanders is to provide the direction and training of the ready force for the combat commands. Joint publication reference aims to revive the policy of the combat commands exercise over the RC. The RC forces reserve when not in active duty, when they active duty or when on active duty for training. Authority for the training readiness oversight TRO. The responsibility of Secretary of Military Department of the Administrative Support include the training of the force assigned with them with the commanding combat as prescribed in Title 10 U.S. Standard Code Section 165B. With the further detail of the individual services, the section Title 10 U.S. Standard Code Section 303, 3013, 5013, and 8013. Further guidance of the commanding Joint Chief of the Staff and the Combat Command's cooperative supporting agency serves as responsible with respect to doctrine and policy regarding military education training members of the U.S. Armed Forces in reference to LM and OP. Proceed with the Joint Chief, Chairman, Joint Chief of the Training Manual of the Armed Forces of the United States. The reference J tab of the Joint Training System is defined the process of the procedure of accomplishing goals sustained in the instruction. Change of the policy recommended the change of the documentation will be submitted to the joint staff of the Cjcsi of the corner of the combat command services of the Reserve Corps and National Guards Bureau Cooperative Support Agency joint staff with approval of the chairman. Initially less blank enclosure B, the joint training system.